You, and this little welfare baby. Get out of my store right now. Preston's hand shot out and ripped the backpack off Sophia's shoulder. The force spun her around. She didn't cry. She just stared. Andre stepped forward, palms up. Sir, we haven't done anything. We were just... I don't care what you were doing. Preston's face was red now. I saw you pocket something by the electronics. Empty your pockets. Now. Andre's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed soft. I didn't take anything. You can check the cameras. The cameras don't lie, and neither do I. Preston pointed at Sophia. And this one here, acting like she knows something. Sophia's voice cut through, clear and cold. Consumer Protection Code, Article 42. You can't search us without proof or a warrant. Preston laughed. A cruel, dismissive sound. Save your big words for the orphanage, sweetheart. Nobody listens to people like you here. The police arrived 6 minutes later. They shook Preston's hand. They didn't ask Andre's side. They cuffed him on the sidewalk while Sophia watched, silent, memorizing every badge number. Preston thought he'd just cleaned up his store. He didn't know the small girl standing on the curb had a photographic memory. Every word, every violation, every mistake. And she was about to use all of it to dismantle everything he'd built. Andre sat on the metal bench in the holding cell, back straight, hands folded. He wouldn't slouch. Not here. Not in front of the 3 other men who watched him with hollow eyes. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. Every second felt like an hour. But what burned wasn't the cold bench or the humiliation. It was the memory of Sophia's face when the cuffs clicked shut. She hadn't cried. That terrified him more than anything. Across town, Sophia sat cross-legged on the living room floor, her laptop screen casting blue light across her face. It was 11 p.m. Her aunt had tried to put her to bed twice. Sophia ignored her. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with mechanical precision. She wasn't researching criminal defense yet. She was researching Preston. The county public records database wasn't password protected. It took her 4 minutes to find what she needed. Police call logs. Incident reports. All public. All searchable. Preston Lowell had called the police 14 times in the last 12 months. Sophia opened a spreadsheet. She logged each call. The pattern emerged like a photograph developing in chemical solution. Clear. Undeniable. Damning. 13 of the 14 calls involved non-white individuals. 0 resulted in actual arrests. 0 led to recovered merchandise. Preston had a 100% failure rate in identifying actual criminals, but a 100% success rate in targeting people who looked like her father. Sophia's hands stopped moving. She stared at the screen. This wasn't about a misunderstanding. This wasn't about a bad day or a mistake. Preston was hunting. Her mind flashed back to the store. The way he'd smiled when the officers arrived. The way he'd shaken their hands like old friends. The way he'd pointed at her father with absolute certainty, as if Andre's guilt was written on his skin. She minimized the spreadsheet and opened a new search, Preston Lowell employment history. He'd worked at 3 stores before this one, all in predominantly white neighborhoods, all with similar incident patterns buried in old news articles and Yelp reviews. Complaints from customers, accusations from employees. Nothing ever stuck. He moved on before consequences caught up. Until now, Sophia saved everything to a USB drive. She labeled it Evidence File 1. Then she opened a blank document and typed a single sentence at the top. People versus Andre Williams, defense strategy. Her father thought this was about proving innocence. Sophia knew better. This was about exposing a predator who'd been operating in plain sight for years. Preston had made one critical mistake. He'd chosen the wrong little girl to dismiss. She glanced at the clock. 11:47 p.m. The preliminary hearing was in 31 hours. She had work to do. Sophia's hand reached for the constitutional law textbook on the top shelf. The spine was cracked, pages dog-eared from years of use. As her fingers touched the worn cover, the memory hit her like a wave. She was 7 years old again. The classroom smelled like chalk dust and cleaning solution. 23 students sat in rows of desks bolted to the floor. Mrs. Patterson stood at the front, her voice sharp as broken glass. Sophia, please read the paragraph on page 42. Sophia stared at the page. The words swam. Not because she couldn't read them, because her mind was already 3 pages ahead, cataloging every word, every comma, every footnote. By the time her mouth caught up to speak, the class had moved on. Sophia, We're waiting. She tried. Her lips moved, but nothing came out fast enough. The other kids started to whisper. Is she okay? Why is she so slow? Mrs. Patterson's heels clicked across the linoleum. She leaned down, her perfume overwhelming. Sweetheart, I think we need to have a conversation with your father about getting you tested. This kind of delay isn't normal for second grade. Sophia's face burned. She wanted to explain that she wasn't slow, that her brain moved too fast, not too slow, that she'd already memorized the entire chapter while Mrs. Patterson was still writing the page number on the board. But the words wouldn't come. They never did when people were watching. That afternoon, Andre sat across from Mrs. Patterson in the same classroom. Sophia waited outside, her ear pressed to the door. Mr. Williams, I'm recommending Sophia for special education evaluation. She's struggling to keep pace with basic reading comprehension. Her processing speed is significantly below grade level. With respect, Mrs. Patterson, I don't think you've seen what she can do. I see what happens in my classroom every day. The child can barely read aloud without freezing. Andre's voice stayed calm, measured. She freezes because she's already finished. She's waiting for everyone else to catch up. That's not what the assessments show. Then the assessments are wrong. The chair scraped. Andre stood. Thank you for your time. We'll handle this at home. He found Sophia in the hallway, her eyes red but dry. He knelt down to her level. Come on. We're going somewhere. They drove to the public library. Andre led her past the children's section, past the fiction shelves, all the way to the back corner where the legal reference books lived. He pulled a thick volume from the shelf. Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. He placed it in her hands. This is one of the most boring books ever written. Lawyers spend years trying to memorize it. Sophia looked at the dense text. Tiny font. No pictures. Hundreds of pages. Open to any page, Andre said. She flipped to page 87. Rule 26. Duty to disclose. Her eyes scanned the text. Once. That was all it took. The words imprinted on her mind like a photograph burned into film. Every subsection. Every clause. Every exception. Now close the book. She did. Tell me what you just read. Sophia's voice was quiet at first. Then it grew stronger. She recited the entire page. Word for word. Comma for comma. When she finished, Andre's eyes were wet. Again. Page 114. She read it. Closed the book. Recited it perfectly. Page 203. Same result. Andre sat down on the floor beside her. His voice cracked when he spoke. Baby, your mind isn't slow. It's a Formula One engine stuck in traffic. Mrs. Patterson is driving a sedan and wondering why you won't keep her pace. But you're not built for her pace. You're built for something faster. Something better. He tapped the book. This isn't a disability. This is a superpower. And I'm going to teach you how to use it. That night, Andre brought home every legal textbook he could find at the used bookstore. Constitutional law, contract law, criminal procedure. He stacked them on her desk like building blocks. You don't have to read them all, he said. But if you want to, I'll help you understand them. Sophia opened the first book. By midnight, she'd finished 3. By the end of the month, she could recite entire sections of the Constitution from memory. By the end of the year, she was reading case law for fun. Mrs. Patterson never apologized. But 3 years later, when Andre was arrested on false charges, Sophia finally understood why her father had given her those books. He'd known this day would come. He'd been preparing her for a world that would see her skin before it saw her mind. And now, sitting in the dark with a constitutional law textbook in her lap and her father in a cell across town, Sophia understood something else. She wasn't the one who needed to be tested. Preston was. Sophia's bedroom looked like a war room designed by a child and operated by a machine. Papers covered every surface. Case files printed from free legal databases. Highlighted sections of the Fourth Amendment. Handwritten timelines on notebook paper taped to the walls. The floor was a maze of open textbooks, their spines cracked, pages marked with torn strips of grocery store receipts. She sat in the center of it all, cross-legged, laptop balanced on her knees. Her eyes were bloodshot. Dark circles carved shadows beneath them. She'd been awake for 37 hours straight. The preliminary hearing was in 9 hours. Sophia scrolled through another case citation. Her vision blurred. The legal language twisted into knots she couldn't untangle. Jurisprudence from 1998. Precedents that contradicted each other. Footnotes referencing cases she didn't have access to. She had Preston's pattern documented. 14 calls. 13 against minorities. 0 convictions. But so what? Pattern wasn't proof of intent. Not in court. She needed legal precedent that connected discriminatory behavior to false accusations. Something that would force the judge to see what Preston really was. Her laptop pinged. 4:47 a.m. A search algorithm she'd set running hours ago had found something. Henderson versus Retail Security Systems Incorporated, 2003. Federal case. Ninth Circuit. Sophia's hands stopped shaking as she read. A store manager. 17 false police reports over 2 years. All against minorities. The court ruled it constituted a civil rights violation under Title II. Pattern and practice discrimination. The critical sentence jumped off the screen. Security footage and call logs may be admitted as evidence of discriminatory intent when pattern is established. Sophia grabbed her notebook. Started writing. Preston's calls weren't just suspicious. They were admissible evidence. Proof of intent. The foundation for everything. She opened a fresh document and began drafting the motion she'd file in 4 hours. Her father thought this was about proving innocence. Sophia had just found the weapon to prove Preston's guilt. The courthouse smelled like floor polish and fear. Andre shuffled through the side entrance in handcuffs, flanked by 2 deputies. His public defender, a tired woman with a coffee stain on her blouse, had spoken to him for exactly 7 minutes that morning. She'd explained the likely outcome. Plea deal, probation if he was lucky, jail time if he wasn't. She didn't ask if he was innocent. No one ever did. The courtroom doors opened. Andre scanned the gallery, looking for his sister. She'd promised to be there, to bring Sophia. He needed to see his daughter one more time before. He froze. Sophia stood in the back row. She wore a navy blazer 2 sizes too big, sleeves rolled at the cuffs. A white button-down shirt. Black pants that pooled at her ankles. Her hair was pulled back tight. Professional. Severe. In her arms, she carried a leather briefcase that looked like it weighed half as much as she did. But it was her eyes that stopped his heart. They weren't the eyes of a 10-year-old girl. They were the eyes of someone who'd gone to war and come back with ammunition. Sophia walked down the center aisle. Every head turned. She didn't look at them. She looked at Preston, sitting smug in the front row with his lawyer. She sat down directly behind the prosecution table, set the briefcase on her lap, and opened it. Inside, 400 pages of documentation, 14 incident reports, 1 federal precedent, and a 10-year-old girl who'd just spent 41 hours learning how to destroy a man. The judge entered. All rise. The public defender arrived 12 minutes late, sweat stains darkening his shirt collar. He dropped his briefcase, spilling papers across the floor. Andre watched him scramble to collect them. Mr. Williams. The defender's voice was a rushed whisper. They're offering a deal. Plead guilty to misdemeanor theft, 6 months probation, restitution. It's the best we're getting today. I didn't steal anything. That's not how this works. The store owner testified. You have priors. A traffic ticket from 2019. Doesn't matter. We go to trial, you lose. Take the deal. Judge Morrison cleared his throat. Counsel, are we ready to proceed, or should I reschedule for someone who respects this court's time? The defender stood, fumbling with his notes. Your Honor, my client would like to. Objection. Every head turned. Sophia stood in the gallery, briefcase in hand. The courtroom was quieter now. The jokes had stopped. In the gallery, 2 reporters opened their notebooks. Preston's lawyer leaned over, whispering urgently. Preston shook his head, jaw tight. He was still certain he'd win. He still didn't understand what was happening. The state calls Preston Lowell. Preston stood, buttoned his suit jacket, and walked to the stand with the posture of a man who'd never been questioned in his life. He placed his hand on the Bible without hesitation. The prosecutor guided him through the narrative. Preston was smooth, articulate, reasonable. He described Andre as aggressive and evasive. He painted Sophia as disruptive and disrespectful. He expressed sympathy. Of course, he wished the situation hadn't escalated, but safety came first. The prosecutor nodded along. And you're certain you saw Mr. Williams conceal merchandise? Absolutely certain. I've been in retail management for 16 years. You develop an instinct for these things. Thank you, Mr. Lowell. Nothing further. Judge Morrison looked at Sophia. Cross-examination. She stood, walked to the stand. She had to tilt her head up to look at Preston. He looked down at her with a patient smile. like he was indulging a child's tantrum. Mr. Lowell, how many times have you called the police on customers in the past year? The smile flickered. I don't keep count. I do. 14 times. Would you like to see the records? Preston's lawyer half rose. Sat back down. If that's what the logs say, Preston said smoothly. We take theft seriously. And of those 14 calls, how many resulted in arrests? I'm not responsible for police outcomes. 0. The answer is 0. How many of those 14 people were non-white? Objection, the prosecutor snapped. Relevance. I'm establishing pattern, Your Honor. Judge Morrison hesitated. I'll allow it. Answer the question, Mr. Lowell. Preston's jaw tightened. I don't see race. I see behavior. That's not what I asked. I don't keep track of people's. 13. 13 of 14. That's not instinct, Mr. Lowell. That's profiling. Preston's face flushed red. You don't understand the pressures of retail management. You're a child playing lawyer. You have no idea. I have evidence. Do you? I have 16 years of experience. And 0 convictions. The courtroom went still. Preston's hands gripped the rail. I know what I saw. Or you saw what you expected to see. His voice rose. I saw a man who didn't belong. He stopped. Too late. The words hung in the air. Andre closed his eyes. Sophia didn't move. Layer 4. The boiling point. The fatal error. 300 words. Sophia let the silence breathe. Then, what do you mean by didn't belong, Mr. Lowell? Preston's lawyer was gesturing frantically. Preston ignored him. I mean someone who was clearly uncomfortable, clearly out of place in that environment. A black man in an electronics store is out of place. That's not what I said. Then clarify. Preston leaned forward, his voice sharp now, professorial. Condescending. I've worked in this industry long enough to recognize patterns. Certain demographics have higher theft rates. That's just statistics. When someone from that demographic enters a high-value section and exhibits nervous behavior. My father is a mechanical engineer. Then yes, I trust my judgment. I know what criminals look like when I see one. Some people like your father, they have a certain look, a way of moving. It's evolutionary. Survival instinct. Sophia's pen stopped moving. The court reporter's fingers froze over her keyboard. Preston kept going, oblivious. I'm protecting my store, my employees, and my community. If that means I'm cautious around people who people who look like me, I'm talking about criminal behavior, not race. You just said it's evolutionary. You said my father has a certain look. That criminals look a certain way. What way is that, Mr. Lowell? Preston's face twisted. The mask cracked completely. People like you and your father. You come into places you don't belong. You cry racism when you're caught. And you destroy good people's lives with accusations. I'm tired of it. I did nothing wrong. I saw what I saw. And if that makes me racist in your little victim narrative, I don't care. The gavel didn't fall. Judge Morrison just stared. He just signed his own death warrant. If this made your blood boil, hit like and subscribe to watch him lose everything in the next 60 seconds. Sophia didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a bound document. 40 pages. Tabs color-coded. Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence a pattern of conduct that establishes discriminatory intent under Title II of the Civil Rights Act. The prosecutor shot to his feet. Your Honor, this is a preliminary hearing for petty theft, not a civil rights trial. It became one the moment Mr. Lowell testified, Sophia said. She walked to the bench and handed the document to Judge Morrison. This contains 14 police incident reports filed by Mr. Lowell between March 2022 and March 2023. All public record. Judge Morrison opened the file. Started reading. Sophia continued. 14 calls. 13 against non-white individuals. 0 resulted in recovered merchandise. 0 resulted in charges. The 14th call was against a white teenager who actually did steal $300 in video games. Mr. Lowell didn't call the police for that one. He called the boy's parents and resolved it privately. Preston's lawyer was flipping through his own notes frantically, looking for an exit. Sophia placed another document on the bench. In Henderson v. Retail Security Systems Incorporated, 2003, the Ninth Circuit ruled that a pattern of false accusations targeting minorities constitutes evidence of discriminatory intent, even without explicit racial language. The court held that security footage and call logs are admissible to prove such intent when pattern is established. She turned to face Preston. Mr. Lowell, you didn't see my father steal. You saw a black man in your store and decided he was guilty, just like the 13 times before. The difference is this time, you targeted someone whose daughter could prove it. Judge Morrison looked up from the file. His expression had changed entirely. Mr. Lowell, these reports. You called the police on a woman for suspicious behavior that turned out to be her waiting for her prescription? Preston said nothing. And here, a teenager you accused of theft was actually an employee's son? Your Honor, Preston's lawyer stood. My client may have made errors in judgment, but errors? Sophia's voice cut through. Or a systematic pattern of racial profiling that violates federal law. The prosecutor was gathering his papers, distancing himself. This wasn't a shoplifting case anymore. This was a civil rights violation on the record. Preston's lawyer stood abruptly. Your Honor, I need a recess to consult with my client. Denied. Judge Morrison's voice was ice. Mr. Lowell, do you have anything to say in response to these allegations? Preston's face had gone from red to white. His hands shook. Those reports are out of context. I was doing my job. Your job is not to racially profile customers. I don't, his voice cracked. This is absurd. She's a child. She doesn't understand. She understands better than you do. Judge Morrison closed the file, pushed it aside. And so do I. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, in light of new evidence, the state would like to request. Don't bother. Morrison looked at Andre. Mr. Williams, you're free to go. Charges dismissed. Bailiff, remove the cuffs. The metallic click echoed through the silent courtroom. Andre stood slowly, rubbing his wrists, staring at his daughter. Preston sat frozen in the witness box. He'd walked into court a respected businessman. He was leaving as something else entirely. And everyone in that room had just watched it happen. Judge Morrison removed his glasses and set them on the bench with deliberate care. The courtroom held its breath. Mr. Lowell, in 16 years on this bench, I've seen a lot of desperate defenses. But I've never seen someone confess to systematic civil rights violations while under oath. He picked up Sophia's file. 14 false reports. 13 against minorities. 0 actual crimes. And now, perjury committed in my courtroom. Preston's lawyer was already gathering his things. Your Honor, if we could discuss. We're done discussing. Morrison's voice cut like a blade. Bailiff, take Mr. Lowell into custody. Charges, perjury, filing a false police report, and obstruction of justice. The civil rights matter will be referred to the federal prosecutor's office. The color drained from Preston's face like water from a breaking dam. What? No, Your Honor, you can't. I have a family, I have. So does Mr. Williams. And you tried to destroy his. The bailiff approached. Preston stood on shaking legs. His perfect suit suddenly looked like a costume. His confident posture collapsed into something small and terrified. This is insane. She's a child. She manipulated. She presented evidence. You presented prejudice. Morrison's gavel fell. Remove him. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed through the courtroom for the second time that day. But this time, they locked around different wrists. Preston looked at the gallery, at the reporters scribbling furiously, at his lawyer walking away without looking back, at the other store employees in the back row, their faces carefully neutral. No one met his eyes. No one was coming to save him. He'd walked into this courtroom a respected businessman, a pillar of the community, a man who knew how to spot criminals. He was leaving as one. The bailiff guided him toward the side door. Preston's legs moved mechanically, like a puppet with cut strings. At the threshold, he turned back one last time. Sophia stood beside her father, the oversized blazer hanging off her small shoulders, her face unreadable. She'd beaten him with a briefcase full of public records and a federal case citation she'd found at 4:47 in the morning. She was 10 years old. The door closed behind him with a sound like a coffin lid. The courtroom was still buzzing with shocked conversation when the man in the expensive suit approached. Andre was holding Sophia, both of them still processing what had just happened. The public defender had apologized 3 times and disappeared. The reporters were circling like sharks. Mr. Williams. The man's voice was smooth, practiced. Gerald Hutchins, corporate counsel for Lowell Electronics parent company. Could I have a moment? Andre's jaw tightened. If this is about, it's about making this right. Hutchins pulled out a folder. My clients are horrified by what happened. Mr. Lowell's actions do not represent our company values. We want to offer immediate compensation. He opened the folder. Inside was a check already filled out. $250,000. Andre stared at it. That was 4 years of his salary. Sophia's college fund. The mortgage paid off. Security. We'll also terminate Mr. Lowell's employment effective immediately and ensure he never works in retail management again. We'll issue a public apology. Whatever you need to avoid litigation. It was everything. More than everything. Andre looked down at Sophia. Her face was pale, eyes ringed with exhaustion. She'd been awake for over 40 hours. She'd dismantled a racist career with case law and pattern recognition. She'd saved him. And now this man was offering them $250,000 to go away quietly. Sophia? Andre's voice was soft. What do you think? Every eye in the remaining crowd turned to the 10-year-old girl in the too big blazer. She looked at the check, then at Hutchins, then at her father. When she spoke, her voice was steady, but Andre could hear the tremor underneath. We have conditions. Hutchins blinked. I'm sorry. Conditions? Sophia's hands gripped the edge of her briefcase. 2 of them. The lawyer glanced at Andre, who just nodded. Your show, baby girl. Sophia stood straighter. The blazer slipped off one shoulder. She didn't fix it. First, Preston Lowell never manages a store again. Not just your company. Any company. You put it in writing, and you enforce it. If he gets hired anywhere in retail management, you tell them what he did. Hutchins shifted. That's aggressive, but workable. Second, Sophia's voice got quieter but harder. 50,000 of that goes into a scholarship fund. For kids like me. Kids who need to learn how to defend themselves because the system won't. The courtroom had gone completely silent. Hutchins stared at her. This wasn't negotiation from a victim. This was legislation from someone who'd seen the machine and wanted to break it. You're turning down $50,000, he said slowly. I'm investing it. Sophia's eyes didn't leave his. In the next kid who has to teach themselves constitutional law at 7 years old because their teacher calls them slow. In the next girl who has to stay up for 40 hours because her dad's public defender showed up drunk. In the next family who can't afford to fight back. She paused. Do we have a deal? Hutchins looked at Andre. Andre's eyes were wet. The lawyer clicked his pen, started writing amendments on the contract. Yes, he said quietly. Yes, we do. Sophia nodded once. Then she turned to her father. Can we go home now? They walked out of the courthouse into blinding afternoon sunlight. The steps were crowded with reporters shouting questions. Andre waved them off, his arm around Sophia's shoulders. She'd done it. She'd won. Against a racist manager. Against an incompetent defender. Against a system designed to grind people like them into dust. They reached the bottom step. The briefcase slipped from Sophia's hands and hit the concrete with a heavy thud. Papers spilled out. Incident reports. Case citations. Her handwritten notes. She stared at them. Her hands started to shake. Not the small tremor of nerves. The violent, uncontrollable shaking of a body that had been running on pure adrenaline and was now crashing hard. Sophia? Andre knelt beside her. Her breath came in short, rapid bursts. Her eyes, those sharp, calculating eyes that had dismantled a man twice her age, were suddenly wet and young and terrified. Baby, what's wrong? We won. You won. I know. Her voice cracked. I know we won. But she didn't look like someone who'd won. She looked like someone who'd been holding a building on their shoulders and had just realized they couldn't put it down. The trembling spread to her legs. She sat down hard on the steps, no longer able to stand. The oversized blazer bunched around her. She pulled her knees to her chest. Andre sat beside her, gathering her into his arms. She didn't cry dramatically. She just curled into him and made a sound like something breaking. Daddy, I'm so tired. It came out as a whisper. I just want to go home. I don't want to think anymore. I don't want to remember anymore. I just want to be tired and go home. Andre held her tighter, his own tears falling into her hair. Around them, the reporters had gone quiet, cameras lowering. This wasn't a victory shot. This was a 10-year-old girl who'd been forced to become something else to save her father. Who'd weaponized her gift because the world gave her no choice. Who'd spent 40 hours learning how to destroy a man because the alternative was losing the person she loved most. She'd won. But childhood doesn't come back once you leave it behind. I've got you, baby, Andre whispered. I've got you. They sat there on the courthouse steps, surrounded by scattered legal documents and the ruins of a man's career, while Sophia shook with exhaustion and grief for something she couldn't name. She'd saved her father. But the girl who'd walked into that store 2 weeks ago, the one who still believed the system worked, who thought being smart was enough, who didn't know how much hate lived in ordinary places, was gone. They'd won. But God, the price was high. The Saturday sun filtered through oak trees in Patterson Park, dappling the grass with golden light. Children's laughter echoed across the playground. A soccer ball rolled past a picnic table where Andre sat, watching. Sophia chased after it, her sneakers kicking up dust, her hair flying wild and free. No blazer, no briefcase, just a 10-year-old girl in a purple t-shirt playing with kids her own age. She kicked the ball back to a boy who waved thanks. She waved back, grinning. Andre exhaled slowly, something tight in his chest finally loosening. For months after the trial, she'd had nightmares. She'd wake up reciting case law in her sleep, her hands shaking like they had on those courthouse steps. She'd stopped reading for pleasure. Everything became a puzzle to solve, a threat to analyze. But gradually, slowly, the girl came back. She started drawing again, stopped checking legal databases every night, laughed at cartoons instead of closing arguments. She was still brilliant, still gifted, still the girl who could memorize a page in 3 seconds. But she was also just Sophia again. Dad, she ran over, breathless and happy. Can I get ice cream? Not, may I, pursuant to parental guidelines. Just can I? Andre smiled. Yeah, baby. You can. The Williams Justice Scholarship Fund opened its doors 4 months after the trial. $50,000 became $75,000 after private donations poured in from people who'd seen the news coverage. Then $100,000. Then more. It funded legal education resources for underprivileged youth. It paid for LSAT prep courses. It provided grants for kids who taught themselves to read case law in libraries because no one else would teach them. Sophia visited the fund's first recipient on a cold Tuesday in November. Marcus, a 13-year-old boy from the South Side who'd memorized the entire Bill of Rights after his older brother was wrongfully arrested. He'd taught himself criminal procedure from YouTube videos. He had Sophia's same hungry eyes, the same desperate brilliance. She handed him his first scholarship check. $2,000 for books and tutoring. You're going to do great things, she told him. Marcus looked at the check like it was a passport to another world. How did you know? How did you know all that stuff in court? Sophia smiled. It didn't hurt to remember anymore. My dad gave me books, and someone tried to take him away. So I read faster. She squeezed his shoulder. Now you read faster too. And when someone tries to tell you that you can't, you show them what happens when we fight back. Andre had quit his old job. The settlement money gave him the freedom to choose. He opened a small engineering consultation firm, working from home, setting his own hours. He was there when Sophia got home from school now. There for every homework question, every bad day, every moment she needed him. They weren't victims anymore. They were builders. Preston Lowell never worked in retail again. The corporate ban held. His name became a case study in employment law seminars. The Lowell incident, discriminatory practice, and corporate liability. He filed for bankruptcy 8 months after the trial. His wife divorced him. His country club membership was quietly revoked. The friends who used to shake his hand at charity galas stopped returning calls. He moved to a small town 3 states away, working night shifts at a warehouse, unloading trucks in silence. No one knew his name there. No one cared. He'd built his identity on authority and respect, on being the man who decided who belonged and who didn't. Now he was no one. Just another invisible worker in a fluorescent-lit building, counting down hours until a shift ended. The irony wasn't lost on him. But irony doesn't pay rent. And humility learned too late doesn't undo damage already done. He was 52 years old and starting over with nothing. That was his legacy. On a Sunday evening 6 months after the trial, Sophia sat at the kitchen table doing homework. Regular homework. 5th grade math. She hummed while she worked. Andre cooked dinner, the smell of garlic and herbs filling the small house they'd been able to keep because of the settlement. Dad, Sophia looked up from her worksheet. Yeah, baby. Do you think it mattered? What we did. Andre turned off the stove and sat across from her. He thought about Preston's systematic hunting, about the 13 other families who'd been targeted before them, about Marcus and the other kids who now had the Williams Scholarship. I think, he said carefully, that we showed people what's possible when you refuse to be invisible. When you fight back with truth instead of anger. When you use your gifts to build instead of destroy. Sophia nodded slowly. Mrs. Patterson emailed me yesterday. Andre's eyebrows rose. The teacher who? Yeah. She apologized. Said she's changing how she identifies gifted students. Said I taught her something. Sophia smiled. I forgave her. That was the thing about his daughter, Andre thought. She'd learned how to dismantle a predator with precision and evidence. But she'd also held on to mercy. She could have become bitter, hardened, angry at a world that forced her to grow up too fast. Instead, she'd chosen to grow strong and stay soft. You know what the best part is? Sophia closed her math book. I don't have to prove anything anymore. I already know what I can do. So now I just get to be me. Andre reached across the table and took her hand. You were always enough, Sophia. Just as you are. She squeezed back. Outside, the sun set over their neighborhood, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold. Somewhere, another family was fighting a battle they didn't ask for. Another child was teaching themselves to survive in a system that didn't see them. But tonight, in this house, there was peace. They'd won their war, and they'd done it without losing themselves. This story ended with justice. Most don't. If this story stayed with you, leave a like and subscribe for the ones that come next.